Hey everybody, Tom Barnes, stories from the 78, a story that is global, definitely global, but from our friends across the pond, as they say. I don't know, Dale, do you hate when people say that? Does that annoy you guys as much as it does people here for some reason?
Not really. To be honest, I think we hear the kind of expression all the time. So it's neither one or the other really.
Okay, good. Just checking. Dale Henry, thank you for joining me. And we're talking about Harry Potter and a really great story, not only of discovering something that probably people thought was lost, but then buying it and then giving back to a community that's in need. It's kind of this whole encompassing of this first one of the first printings of Harry Potter, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, um, yeah. It's quite an interesting story really about about how it was found and how I came to be in its possession. Uh, yeah, it's kind of also quite a random story. I think a
Yeah.
lot of stuff tends to happen to me in quite a random manner. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? I feel like the random things that happen to people who are in the right place at the right time. So, if you wouldn't mind just giving a little bit of the story of the history of the book and how you came to come across it.
Yeah, so the book itself was found in a local primary or elementary school in Oxfordshire, a place called Minster Lovell, which is near Whitney in the Cotswolds. Um, it's it was a book that was bought alongside a load of other books, proof books. So these are the books that they create sort of just to judge the kind of feedback from the book community, really.
Hmm.
So they send them out free of charge to various different publishers and readers who take a look. I mean, you've got to bear in mind this was 1997. Now, it's more likely that that would be sent to influencers and people that could kind of spread the word about a
Right.
new
Yeah.
book. But people had this opportunity to have a look at what was inside the book, the content of the book, and any errors that there might be, just to point out, hey, look, this isn't typed quite right, or this doesn't read quite right. And there's a part, famously within this book,
Yeah, kind of a
where
big one.
J yeah, yeah, precisely, yeah. So J.K. Rowling is spelled as J.A. Rowling. That's actually there's actually a reason for that. Her name isn't actually uh J.K. Rowling.
Oh, well, that makes
So
sense, I guess.
her name's Joanne Rowling. She didn't have a middle name, so because this book was when it was initially, the publisher initially read it, they said, "Well, this is very much a boy's book." And young boys are more likely to purchase the book if they think it's from a male author. So
Oh, I didn't
so
know that.
actually, yeah, so she was encouraged then to just use initials and to use two initials, and it was she decided upon K. So she'd written A just out of a thought of, okay, we don't know what it's going to be yet, just whack A in it, and
Hmm.
then later when she decided it was going to be K, it just wasn't edited on the first page. So the K stands for Kathleen, which is her paternal grandmother's first name. So that's what
Oh.
she chose to use as the middle name.
And this book was sitting in elementary school for better part of 20 years. Is that right? And then and then you found it because it was stored away. Books nobody likes to throw books away, right? So when things were moved or whatnot, people put books in boxes and then you put them away and then it's a treasure trove later. That's kind of what happened with this, right?
Well, it's not. It's a bit of a complicated well, the story's got a bit the narrative's got a bit complicated. A couple of media outlets have described it as being found by myself, which it wasn't. um Actually, it's confusing because it went up for auction in the UK a couple of years ago, and it was unsold at auction.
That's crazy that it was
And
unsold.
yeah, that's right. So initially, like you say rightly, it was put away by the principal of the school in, I think it's 2002, when they realized that it was coming really quite famous, and it might have some value.
Wow.
And then it was actually forgotten about and lost until I think it was 2021. So then it was refound
Mm-hmm.
by the principal, who is now retired. And then they decided to sell it. So it wasn't myself that found it, but I did read about the story in the news.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I then contacted the the auctioneer directly and said, "Well, look, we're just down the road." I had no idea why I bought it. I think I know the reason why I bought it was that it was just
Yeah.
a really interesting book and a really interesting story. And I thought that actually it could really benefit the community that I operate in. So I run a hospitality business. And I thought, we depend quite heavily on tourism in this part of the country. So I thought it would be a really nice item to have and kind of get more people to visit the town by displaying it in the local library.
Mm-hmm.
So I bought it for that purpose. But when I offered it to the local library, they actually refused it. They rejected it based on the value of the book being too high. So their insurance wouldn't actually cover
Oh.
the holding of the book. So they have lots of things like um, fossils and historic transcripts and all sorts of stuff from the town. This town dates back to for Doomsday Book, which would
Oh,
have
wow.
been 10 I can't remember 1080 something like that. So yeah, it's a very historic town, and yeah, they just weren't able to show it, so or display it. So yeah, I really had no kind of other use for it apart from to sort of keep it and hold it. And of course, that's always appealing, and it's always nice to have nice things. But
Sure.
I was also slightly concerned that I would end up spilling milk on it or something.
Well, and I
Yeah.
gotta imagine too, like if word got out that you had the book, I imagine somewhere in the back of your mind you're like, people know I have this book in my house. Is that
Mm.
really, do I want to be in that space? Because somebody probably wants it more than I do. Like did that thought run across your mind where you're like, maybe I should figure out a different way to present this book to the world?
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't really concerned about security or anything like that, if I'm honest. I mean, the part of the world that we're in is really quite a secure place, and there are many people with high value items and articles in the
Fair
area.
enough.
But it was more about, hogging something that ultimately, there are less, it's estimated there are less than 100 worldwide.
Wow.
So it's an exceptionally rare book. So yeah, it was more about having, offering someone else the opportunity to have it. I mean, strangely, this area is very, very closely kind of linked to Harry Potter. Many of the filming scenes were done locally. Um,
And it's
and
Oxfordshire. Is that where you're at? Right.
That's right. Yeah, I'm in Oxfordshire, and also, Wiltshire is the next county along, and there's a fair bit of filming that was done in Wiltshire as well. So Oxford and Wiltshire. Downton Abbey's filmed just up the road here. It's very much, that
Wow.
kind of part of the world. So it's
Significant interest, I would say.
yeah, yeah, and actually, strangely enough, I I bumped into Emma Watson, I think
Oh,
about 3 months ago. Yeah, she was. I think she was visiting a local hospital that I was in. So it was a bit surreal. I was like, that's Emma Watson.
wow. Yeah. I mean, that's like full circle in that moment for you there, which is with the based on the history and then the history in film and television all coming right in person with Emma Watson right in your purview there, huh?
Absolutely, yeah.
I was reading that the 2000 in 2021 the first edition Harry Potter and Philosopher so Stone was so are auctioned off for like almost $500,000. So what is the estimate for the one that you found? There was a big auction yesterday, wasn't there? Or is that today?
That's right. Yeah, it was yesterday. It was
Yeah.
sold. It was sold yesterday, and it reached $30,000 dollars before the fees are added. So I think it was about $40,000 it sold for yesterday.
So I
Yeah.
imagine you're happy with that just because that money, the proceeds that you're putting back into the town, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm really happy. It's a really nice thing to be able to do, and it's a spontaneous thing to do, like I said. And before, I've along with other partners, we've invested into the town and done plenty of other things. So it's really nice to be able to earmark those funds for the next big thing. But yeah, you're right. The thing about auctions is they're just so unpredictable. And the book that was sold for, I think it was $472,000.
Yeah.
Um, that was first edition, of which
Hmm.
there are 500 books, and those were hardbacks. But it's just a more attractive looking book.
Right.
Um, e Even like the book that I sold was the proof, so that came before the first edition. So it's the first mass printed book. But it doesn't have the same level of collector's appeal as the first edition. I personally don't know why, because I think it's a more important book
Well, that's what I
in
was going to
terms of the
ask you.
actual journey.
It would feel
Yeah.
like this one would be more valuable just because of the infancy of it all, because it was, I mean, I'm looking at the cover of it where at the top it says uncorrected proof copy. Like
Yeah.
that's like getting an album before, it was mass produced for like, Led Zeppelin or something, where you have like the album that was finding those are so rare. So it's interesting in the book world, or I don't know if it's Harry Potter driven world versus book world, but it's interesting all the same.
That's right, and I think I think that it's got a lot to do. A lot of these kind of items, whether it be Star Wars or Harry Potter or anything like that, Pokemon. It's a lot of these kind of franchises have real nostalgia, quality or value to people, and I think that seeing that book with the Harry Potter kind of glasses and but seeing that book cover kind of invokes that nostalgia from people, and I think people, you can be two kinds of collectors. You can be the kind of collector that's really interested in the provenance, the past, the history of the
Hmm.
the book or the item, but you can also be that collector who just likes what they like. They like something nice. They like something that they can display in a shelf, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's a really rare copy." So it's yeah, I think that the appeal of that nostalgia is really what's capturing the value when people are placing their bids.
Do you know much about the buyer? Is it like a museum or is it like a private collector?
I actually have no idea about the buyer. I think in auctions, in a general sense, buyers are anonymous until they wish to kind of
Right.
reveal themselves. But I mean, I can only really speculate, and I would have thought that somebody is probably very taken by the story and the history and the past of the book. So I would have thought it was somebody who's more captivated by the whole story, the whole provenance of it all, rather than the the Harry Potter, the character itself, and the world of Harry Potter, more of how the world came to be.
Yeah.
I would have thought.
Yeah, very, very cool story. And Dale, thank you for sharing it with me. You mentioned that you were in hospitality and in the town that you're in. Do you want to say what you do in the town as far as the hospital? You have like a restaurant, or is it like what do you have down there? And because you mentioned, I was reading that you guys were pretty affected by the pandemic and the lack of tourism since then to help get things rolling again. Go ahead.
That's right, yeah. So the town that we operate in is called Farringdon, and like I said, that's in Oxfordshire. The business is the Narrows of Farringdon, and that's cocktail bars that we
Ah,
specialise in. We were operating in Bristol, a big a city in the west of England. And yeah, during the pandemic, we were really investing into the town to try and raise it up and bring it up. And actually, to be honest, there has been a lot of other inward investment in the area, so it's definitely working. But yeah, we want to really hit the ground running and keep pushing it.
so folks who are coming to England, they should stop by the cocktail bar, is what you're saying. Oops,
Oh,
sorry.
absolutely. Yeah, there's a really nice old pub across the road called the Old Crown Coaching Inn. It's a perfect place to stay, especially for like, you can reach the whole area. You've got Jeremy Clarkson's farm, which is based a half an hour from here. You've got, David Beckham doesn't live too far. It's an incredible place. It's all the kind of, Renee Zellweger kind of areas really. So any of those, yeah, Hugh Granty kind of films. That's
Ah,
all filmed around here.
yeah, and not to mention the Harry Potter vibe of what you were talking about, where
Absolutely.
they filmed and Downton Abbey and all those things. If and people here in the States are nerds about that stuff. They love it. I mean, there's a Downton Abbey exhibit that's not far from where I am in Chicago here, and there's lines out the door every day for people just to experience it and be like on part of like what were sets or replica of the sets. So, yeah,
Yeah.
we love it here. So, thank you for taking time to chat with me. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. You're very welcome.